Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Minnesota Bound podcast, the stories behind the stories. I'm Laura Shera, your host for today, and I'm really excited about today's podcast. I would like to thank our sponsors of the podcast, Connecticut, the Minnesota DNR, Star Bank, and North Dakota Tourism. We thank you for supporting our podcast today. I have one of my favorite fishing buddies on air with me today, Josh Stevenson, who is a muskie nut, I'll call you. Josh, how are you doing today?
Well, I'm doing great today. We caught a muskie midday, so any day you catch a muskie and land it and get it in the net and measure it, it's a good day no matter what happens.
Well, Josh, you must have a lot of good days because I feel like every time you're on the water, you land a muskie in your fishing boat. There's got to be magic behind this.
A lot of experience, lot of game planning, being able to adjust to the weather and water conditions. For instance, today, this huge cold front. I mean, I was underdressed and didn't realize the north wind was going to be as strong as it was, and I was pretty much shivering most of the afternoon. So, just always being able to adjust seems to consistently put fish in the boat.
It does. And I want to give everybody a little bit of background on Josh. And your guide service is called Mighty Muskie Guide Service. And you've been guiding for 25 years. And you also have a successful YouTube channel called Fishing with Josh Stevenson. You've been featured on Minnesota Bound with me. And if you want to watch that, that's on mnbound.com. That's Fishing with Josh Stevenson. And you also, which is really cool, are you still the current holder of the Minnesota State record for the Tiger Muskie?
I am, yep.
That is incredible. And you've been fishing muskie since you were a little boy, correct?
Correct, yeah. I'd had my first guide trip when I was 16 years old. The Minnesota Grizz, he's a walleye fishing guide, and he knew that I was on muskies so young, and he got my first guide trip for me when I just got my driver's license.
Wow.
So I obviously wasn't full-time then, but when I got that state record Tiger Muskie in 1999, that put me on the map, put me into the full-time status. Because back then there wasn't all the social media stuff. You didn't create pages. It took like getting on your dad's radio show or getting in an article in the Star Tribune or getting on Channel 5 News, one of those main media outlets back then. That's how you became a fishing guide. Was like an old-fashioned good catch. And that's when all of a sudden my phone blew up and I had 30 to 40 muskie trips in a row, and it was all based on one fish, one almost like a lottery catch. It's pretty cool.
And it hasn't stopped since. I know when I ping you to see if you have time to go out in the water, you're pretty much booked almost every day.
Yeah, I mean, the shop, I also own Blue Ribbon Bait and Tackle, and store this year has been so incredible because of the pandemic. As you know, the whole industry is blowing up. So this year it's been a little bit more of a juggling act, balancing the two. But most years when I have good help and good management at the shop, I'm guiding full time at least 6 months of the year, and then I do a handful of ice fish and stuff.
That's so awesome. So let's get to some of the tips and tricks to having success on the water for when it comes to catching muskies, because, muskies are considered a trophy catch, a catch of a lifetime. And, I have spent a lot of time on the water trying to get my first muskie, and I felt like it was never going to happen. And then, once you catch the first one, they do call it muskie fever for a reason, because you just want to keep on seeing if you can catch more and then beat the kind of your own personal record of what you have caught and landed in the boat and actually released back into the water. And you seem to make it so easy, I have to say, just by, again, looking at your Instagram page, your Facebook page, you seem to have a muskie in your boat every single day you're on the water. So what are, besides being prepared for weather as you were today, what would you say are some of the tips that you can give people to have success when it comes to catching muskies?
I think in a nutshell, always viewing it as a never-ending learning process. So the day you call yourself a muskie expert or I'm the expert of this or that is the day you probably stop learning, because you're not eager to learn like you would be on your first 10 trips. And for me, it's always just keeping that humble attitude. Like I don't have it figured out yet. Mother Nature is still in control. The deck of cards can shuffle at any time, and you have to keep reinventing yourself. So often on the fly, I'll have to adjust my game plan. I can come into a boat launch and say, well, I'm going to use X, Y, and Z and hit spots A, B, and C. But if the wind changes or there's extra boat traffic or what have you, you have to be able to adjust on the fly. And especially me as a client, as a guide, I have to adjust to the skills of my clients. So often I've gotten smarter and just interviewed people like, what is your experience level? And often people will sell themselves like, well, I got it all figured out. I can use a bait cast rod and reel and I can figure eight and do all these things. And then you get them in the boat and they might not be able to cast. So I'm like, okay, well, I can't run to the best spot yet because I have to train this person how to fish, for muskies. So being right off the bat, knowing that you have to adjust to every single day, because there's no 2 days of fishing that are the same. And that's what keeps a lot of us just constantly coming back. So you never get bored with it because there's always a new circumstance to try and figure out. And keeping that open mind and that attitude is a huge part of it. Because if you think I've got it figured out and I'm going to use my favorite lure and I'm going to promote this lure or that bait, you're probably going to sell yourself short. Because if you tried a different tactic or fish deeper or shallower or faster or slower, you might not be able to get the fish unless you're willing to adjust.
Very true. And is there certain, I've heard some muskie guides say there's certain weather patterns that are really best to hit the water right after, a big storm or things like that. Do you have any of those theories that you follow?
Well, today was the biggest cold front of the year. So a lot of times people will say you don't want to go out on a cold front, but I always say you're not going to. You always got to prove it. So you're not going to prove anything from your couch or watching something at home. So even today, I didn't really have that many. My expectations weren't real high because it was a major slap in the face with all this cold weather. But I still got one, and I landed one, and I checked 5 different spots, and there was one ready to go on one spot, and it was red hot, and I wouldn't have guessed that today, but it's still, without going out and proving it, it's kind of hard to know. And prefrontal conditions, back to your question, are really good. I always look in all my years of doing this is I look for stability. So you could use a good July month if you have like 80 degrees and stable conditions, like whatever the light condition is. If it's sunny and it's 80 degrees 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 days in a row, those fish really get into a pattern, and then you can pattern them as an angler. And it's almost like clockwork when things are stable. But it's, again, when the weather and water conditions flip up and then they're unstable and a front comes through or the light condition changes, which is one of the largest variables for me in muskie fishing. It might be cloudy for a handful of days and then it's really bright out. Those days can be the most challenging. So in a nutshell, to answer your question, is no matter what, you always go if you got time to go. So you go and prove it either way. But if you can find some stability where there's some stable conditions, that I think is when it's like you really can get into it and get in a groove. You can get maybe 2, 3 a day and really learn to pattern them and see where they're moving when things are stable.
Totally. And one of my, the passion that all muskie anglers really have are, not only is it fun to catch them, but it's also part of the experience, and the thrill is to get them back in the water safely. And that's what I find is, I love the addiction of the mayhem that happens of safely getting the fish in the boat, get the picture taken, get it measured, and get it back in the water as quickly as possible. And do you have any catch and release tools that you use to make sure that those fish go back in healthy and they're back swimming?
Yeah, pretty much every tool you can think of, from cutters to bolt cutters for getting hooks out of people's hands. I've encountered it all over the years. The longest pliers you can have to the shorter pliers. Depends on where they're hooked. What you have to do. A mouth spreader is another huge one, the musky size mouth spreader to get that open. The more tools you have, the better, and having like 2 sets of tools too, because we've got, as you said, it gets pretty exciting. I've had a couple times in my life where we're so excited about getting the fish back in the water that you might drop a tool overboard, or that you might be the client might be holding a pair of pliers and they don't know where it ended up going. I mean, it might be underneath the seat, or they might have dropped it in the lake. Having plenty of tools on hand, and probably reviewing somewhere on what to do when you do catch one. That's why it's so great to have a guide, because you can hurry up your learning and see what does a guide have in their boat. What do these guys that do it every day, that like myself, what are the essentials to have in a fishing boat. And it's not just muskies, it too could be walleyes and smallmouth and northerns. Just to have the right tools is important as anything, because I mean, especially with hot weather conditions in the summer, you really have 10, 15, 20 seconds to get these fish back in the water if you're going to keep them real healthy. And that's some of the lighter arguments I've had with people over the years, is like they want to take 15 pictures of this fish, and it's like, no, it's they're the resource. This fish is the most important part of this equation of you holding it and having your memory. I'll take the picture. We're going to get a good shot. We don't need to take videos and photos and everything for minutes on end, because it just hurts the fish in the long run. You might not get the fish to survive. So sometimes I'm almost like a drill sergeant with some clients, because I can tell they're moving kind of slow, and I'm like, we're moving now. Sit there in that chair and hold it this way and listen up, because we're getting this thing done, and this fish is going back within 30 seconds. That's the times where it's very intense. And I'm
It
sure you've been
is.
around. It's sweet. It is, and like you said, it's exhilarating to have them swim away. And the faster they swim away, the better job you did. And you drop that fish in the water, and it just kicks, and you get splashed by its tail. That means you did a good job. You were fast and quick, and it was like the NASCAR, speed, changing the tires as fast as possible. Boom, great pit stop for the fish. We get our memory, and the fish is back, and all's well.
That's so true. And that's one of my things I love fishing with you is not only your enthusiasm for musky fishing, and it's, your enthusiasm stays high all day long when we're out there. We've spent 8 to 9 hours on the water together without, well, we had a couple bites that one day, but then, there's times where you're not going to have a muskie in your boat, but not that that happens often, but when it does, your enthusiasm stays high, and we're always trying new spots. But also when you do have the luck of getting a muskie in the end of your line, it is so fast and very methodical in how we not only land the fish and get the fish in the boat, take the picture as fast as possible and get that fish back in there. That's part of the fun, I think, is getting the fish back in the water safely. That's actually part of the whole experience in and of itself. So that's always a good time.
Part of the mission. Yeah, it's part of the mission. It's not just I get to hold this fish and have a picture of it. No, you're also responsible for that fish and getting it back in the water and having it breathe, and hopefully having it recover very, very fast. And then the next angler comes along and catches it maybe a few days later or a week later.
That's right.
In some cases, I've caught the same fish in the same day. So it's like talk about a fast catch and release deal on that. I mean, sometimes I'm like, what is this fish thinking? I just let it go, and then we caught it, 20 minutes later, it's back for more.
Isn't that amazing? I actually, when I caught one muskie with you, there was a gentleman that swore it was a muskie that he had caught, weeks before that, just by some of the markings it had on it. So it's fun how people really, seem to take in a fish and really study it, and they might see it on a photo days later and be like, that might be the same one. You never know, of course, but it's fun when musky fishermen and fisher ladies are so passionate about it. Do you have any favorite go-to baits that you like to use? Obviously the bucktail is really popular.
Yeah, definitely. That's what I caught the fish on today. But it depends on the time of year. If I could choose one thing and one way to do it, personally, it'd be topwater baits. So there's an array of great topwater baits. The Whopper Plopper comes to mind for me. My old friend Larry Dahlberg's made that bait. We've caught so many muskies on that. The Top Raider, a company called Lake X Lures, have made a bunch of good ones. When you get to see the whole process and watch a muskie chase something that is looking like a fake baby duck, and having the duck try and get away, and having the muskie chase, and then it finally hits it, that is probably as exciting as it gets. I mean, it's always exciting to get a muskie. And today, for instance, when that one hit me at the boat, came out of nowhere, boat side, I did a figure eight, and that was really exciting for like 2 seconds. But I can tell you, when you see that fish following on the surface, back out of the water, trying to eat this creature that it thinks is a bird, and then it finally gets it and eats it, and you get to see the whole thing, and the thing biting it, and then you get to set the hook and go. I mean, that is as exhilarating as it gets. I mean, those are some of the memories and that go down in history for me, of like, this thing was trying to eat a duck or a loon. Like, a lot of them are painted like little loons, and you think, if this was a real loon, this loon would be gone. And that's
Totally.
when you think, it's just so wild to think about that. And even some of the baits that I have, there's this beaver bait they made a handful of years ago, and the thing looks like a big muskrat or beaver in the water. I often call it the creature bait. I'm sure I've showed it to you, but it emulates what with a big beaver tail and everything, a baby beaver swimming through the water. And to have these muskies come up and completely glom an entire beaver at once, you're just going, these things really are water wolves. I mean, the way that they go after stuff, and half the time they can hardly fit it in their mouth, but they're still just completely glomming it. And especially this time of year, it's my favorite time of year, when it gets into fall, when they really start to bulk up and they have that almost intuition, like a squirrel has to gather nuts. They're compelled to eat more because the days are getting shorter, the water temps are getting cooler, and they just start eating. And that's why. And then I could go on and on about this time of year, but when you get people that are now, going back to school or whatever form of school we have during COVID, and having a lot of the pleasure boaters just leave because the water's getting too cold, it's like really fun pickings for guys like me that have waited for this time of year all summer.
Isn't that true? I had one muskie follow topwater one time, and to see its mouth open up like jaws to come after that thing. And, I set the hook wrong, or the muskie got the hook out of its mouth. It came out of the water and shook left, shook right, and that lure came flying right back at me. I was devastated, of course, but that you're so right. And the exhilaration of seeing a muskie come out of the water and chase that like a shark, you're like, whoa, you don't even know what to do with yourself.
It is. It's like, what am I witnessing here? And it is really hard. In your defense, it's really hard to hook them when they're up out of the water. It's like your instinct is to just pull right now because you see it, but often they don't even have it yet. So the rule of thumb, I always have the clients wait like 2 seconds, then pull on it. Let him take it and bring it down, then set the hook. But
Yeah,
of course, your instinct's like, oh, it's biting. Set the hook right now. Boom. And then, like you said, sometimes you set the hook and then the lure comes flying right back at the boat and you're ducking out of the way and the muskie's swimming away and you're like, what just happened?
exactly. That's exactly what happened to me. And that's, the hard part. Your adrenaline's going, and waiting to have patience to set the hook at the right time is part of the learning curve when it comes to muskie fishing, no doubt. So do you, actually, you know what? I want to take a quick break to do a quick ad here. Thank one of our sponsors for the Minnesota Bound podcast, one of which is Kinetical Water. And have you ever had Kinetical Water, Josh? Do you drink Kinetical Water? Have I brought any along on our fishing trips?
I don't think you have. I'd be
I
willing to
don't know
try
if
it.
I have. I probably have, but I don't know if I was sharing it. Probably because I like it so much. But thank you for Connecticut water. I've been drinking Connecticut water for quite a few years now, and the reason I love it so much is I'm a health nut, and I'm really a purist on what is in drinking water. And Connecticut water does a really good job at filtering out all the contaminants and making really great tasting water. And also, it allows you to have great tasting drinking water without using plastic bottles that go back into our environment and landfills. So, thank you to Connecticut Water for providing such a great product. Also, I want to thank North Dakota Tourism. If you want to experience world-class hunting in North Dakota, visit legendarynd.com. Ringneck pheasant counts are up this year in 2020, up 15% in fact. So visit legendarynd.com for more information. All right, we're going to also move on to some of your favorite lakes to catch muskies. And now, we know that the DNR stocks quite a few lakes with muskies, even city lakes. I caught a muskie on Lake Harriet from the shore, wading in water, which is pretty cool. But, if you want to go for the big trophy muskies, are there any lakes that you find to have some really good opportunities?
Well, the DNR has done pretty well with most of them. They're all Leech Lake strain fish, except for the Tiger Muskie lakes. So just about in any of the lakes that are listed in the Twin Cities that have muskies, you have a shot of a 50-incher pretty much any given day. I mean, I'm on the East Metro, so I'm a little biased to the St. Croix River, to the White Bear Lake, Bald Eagle, Forest Lake. I also love the West Side. The traffic's gotten worse over the years, but you can't beat Lake Minnetonka and a few other ones over there. And if you're not afraid to head in, a couple hours, you got Mille Lacs, and there's such a menu of lakes in the Twin Cities that you couldn't possibly learn them all in a couple years. So you can just if you don't have the time to travel and take an hour and a half to go somewhere one way, then just look on a map where you live, and I'm sure I bet within a half hour you have a muskie lake if you're living in the Twin Cities metro. And the thing is, about a lot of my clients that fly in, we don't ever need to leave. We don't have to go too far from the airport. So many people want the convenience of coming and staying near the Mall of America and going fishing within a half hour, 40 minutes, and we tend to do that 90% of the time because if one lake's not doing as well as another, I just head over 15 minutes a different direction and have a different muskie lake that I know is hot at that time, and we get it done. So there's a lot to choose from in the Twin Cities, and that's been the bulk of my guiding for a good 8-10 years now, is just like the Twin Cities metro lakes. I used to always be parked on Mille Lacs and make people drive 2 hours, hour and a half to meet me, but I haven't had to do it as much. And I think it's been more convenient for the people, especially if they're bringing their families and want other forms of entertainment. It's all right here. You got all kinds of entertainment in the metro, and then you also have all these lakes, that have all kinds of fish to be caught. And then doesn't even include the at least 15. I'm thinking about 14, 15 lakes that are tiger muskie only lakes, and those are a hoot. I mean, those are so much fun, and those are stocked every 2 years, I believe, still by the DNR. So those lakes are full of fish too. So that's your Lake Elmo, Lake Jarvis, Orchard, and a whole bunch of other lakes like that too. You can look it all up with the DNR and what they're stocking. But of course, guys like me always want them to stock more and more and more. And I belong to Muskies Inc., and we wish they could do more all the time. And it is harder to stock muskies with these lake associations always having a big pushback on it. But if they seen the amount of money that it stimulates for our tourism dollar coming in, and kind of bucket lists that I'm constantly going after for people, I think it would be advantageous for Minnesota to constantly continue to target the muskies as one of our destination fish, because I know we are the state of the walleye. The walleye is a state fish, but I'm not doing too many trips for walleyes. That guys are flying across the country and paying the amount of money they pay me. They're not looking for a walleye. They're really targeting into that muskie. And I think it's just Minnesota's done a good job overall with having people want to come here for big fish like that.
Oh yeah, they've done a really great job. What's the furthest someone's traveled to come fishing with you to catch muskie?
China. Oh yeah.
Wow.
Mexico. I get people from Mexico. I get people from Europe. Yeah, I mean, at least a couple trips a year. Somebody's really far away. Of course, this year with COVID, everything changed. I didn't get a lot of my long distance clientele, nor could I serve a lot of them with the shop being so busy this year. But it's at least a couple people a year that you almost need a translator to get them, show them how to cast and do the figure eight and all that stuff. I do my best. You got to be very patient, but
That's
yeah.
awesome.
As long as I can say muskie when they hook it, they just start yelling muskie, 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 and then they're excited. There it is.
That's awesome.
All right, we're going to take another quick break just to thank our sponsors. We'd love to also thank the Minnesota DNR. Minnesota's wildlife management areas are a vast array of lands across all of Minnesota. These 1,444, they're going to call them WMAs. Minnesota's wildlife management areas are valued for wildlife and Minnesotans' outdoor recreation opportunities. They maintain hunter walking trails, they plant food plots for wildlife, and develop acres and acres of prairie and grasslands. To find out more, visit Minnesota Wildlife Management Area. Go to www.mndnr.gov/WMAS. Also, want to thank Star Bank.
Hi there, Ron Shera here for Star Bank. If you're putting your money into mega banks down the street, who knows where that money's being used? It's time to make the switch. Bank locally. Keep your money local with a community bank that actually cares about you, your family, your business, and your goals. Check out the bank we use at Minnesota Bound. Try Minnesota's own Star Bank. You can find them online at starbank.net. When you call Star Bank, you actually hear a real living person answering the phone. Star Bank has 10 convenient locations around Minnesota to serve you and all the mobile banking products that you need to manage your money. Check out all that Star Bank has to offer at starbank.net.
So Josh, we talked about topwater casting for muskies, but as the fall continues, and you and I have been out in the water when it's been really cold at the mid-November, et cetera. Does the fishing get better? What kind of, how do you change it up as far as your tactics go?
It definitely gets better. If you look at my news feed from any given year, it pretty much blows up end of September, coming up real soon through the end, through the at least mid to the end of November. Like we were suggesting earlier, the fish just go crazy before winter, so they're bulking up for the long haul of winter, kind of like these squirrels gathering all these nuts. And what happens is there's, instead of maybe one migration a day, meaning one movement where they get real hyper and eat, there might be several. So you can often have fish move 3-4 times in a day. And the funnest part about getting people fish to that time of year with the water temps that cool, you're allowed to use live bait. I mean, you can use live bait all year, but it's hard to keep them alive when the water temps are in the mid 70s. Once the water temps hit like mid 60s, to mid 50s, the minnows live for a long time. So you can often get kids and maybe some elderly people or people that wouldn't want to cast all day long. You can have them drag a minnow behind the boat, and that is a lot of fun too. It's right there with the topwater fishing, because you get in clear water, which the water tends to clear out too in the fall. You get to watch these fish follow these live minnows, and often they won't hit them. But even though they don't hit them, you get to see where the fish is, and you can circle back maybe an hour or two later. And whenever you have a minnow and you get to see the whole process, you always know it's like a gauge to the fishes there, and it also is a gauge to their behavior that day. If they're following a minnow, and especially a minnow, sometimes they rig with no hooks and they don't hit it, that means they're in a negative mood and they're not going to bite, because it's the tail of the tape when you have a minnow in front of their face. But other times they'll cream it, which is obviously what we want. And you'll sometimes have multiple fish fighting over your minnow. So there's somewhere in between the super aggressive and the real lazy fish, but the minnow always gets the fish to at least move and get curious, where there's not really a lure on the planet that is going to do that like the live bait does. And I love the live bait fishing too, because it does allow me to get so many people their first muskie, and especially younger kids. I do most all my trips with 15-year-old kids and under, with fishing with a balloon or the bobber, trying to get them a muskie, because I know it's my best shot at it, as opposed to having them cast lures all summer long into the weed beds in different areas where they might get frustrated quick.
Yeah, isn't that true? Remember, we were even out last at the very tail end of the season last year, and we had, I believe it was the same muskie, and I'm still going to hold to the story that it was a young one, that it took that bait, the live bait, I think it was 5 times, but we could not get the hook set to save our lives. So I was convinced it was too little. It was like trying to take a lunch that was too big or something, but that was...
I think you're right. I remember that. I remember there's people everywhere too. We didn't have too many spots we could fish that day, but there was... You're right. And like I was saying earlier, having these fish like eat fake ducks and giant beaver baits and stuff like that, what they'll go after, especially in the fall. I mean, there's a lot of guys that just subscribe to like get the largest lures you can get in the fall, because they're gonna wait to eat until they have something just giant. So the big pounder bulldogs and big medusas and things of that nature. The bigger the better is what everybody says. It's not always the case for me, because it does boil down to your depth and speed. You have to be accurate with how fast you're presenting that, and then at what depth. That's your main trigger. But the size, color, and action of your bait are the next 3 variables, and it is a variable. But without the right depth and speed, it really doesn't matter about the size. But having those minnows come through, it's so fun watching what would happen if no one was there. A fish chasing another fish, and how the minnow reacts and swims one direction, and the muskie chases it and goes back and forth, and it's pretty neat. It's almost like fishing in an aquarium in a way, especially when you have the minnows right by the boat.
I know, it's really fun to watch it all go down. That's for sure. All right, Josh. Well, if people want to follow you on Instagram or Facebook to see all the big muskies that you land, or if they want to hire you to go out for a day, where can they find you?
Pretty much all the stuff's at mightymuskie.com. Otherwise, I'm in Blue Ribbon Bait and Tackle when I'm not guiding. So especially during the pandemic, I've been in there a little bit more as the fishing industry is blowing up. But I keep most of the YouTube channel stuff and the Facebook feed and all that stuff right at mightymuskie.com. Make that all about my clients and their stories. And I tend to keep our shop more about the customers coming in the store. So I don't really use that as a platform for my guiding, because I think it's all about the customers.
Absolutely.
But in terms of like the guiding and stories like with you and I and other people I've taken out in the past, I keep all that at mightymuskie.com in kind of an archive system through the different social media channels and stuff. That's where my online calendar is too. So if somebody was going to book a day and is Josh available next Wednesday or Thursday, you're going to find it right there, and you just click on it on your phone and you grab the day.
Awesome. And I'm sure you're more than happy to answer any questions if you are in the bait shop at Blue Ribbon Bait and Tackle, if someone wants to come in and just chit chat about muskies.
Oh, without a doubt. And we have everything you need right there, or online at blueribbonbait.com. We do quite an online business for the musky stuff. Yeah, the next best thing to fishing is talking about fishing. So it kind of goes hand in hand. I like it. I can be excited at the store and just can't wait to get out on the water. It's like it's constantly being fed the passion of the outdoors and muskies and fishing, and it's pretty sweet.
That's right. Never ending fish tales. We can all tell them, right?
That's right. Yeah, it's almost like a coffee house in a way, the bait shop. There ain't too many of us left either. The old family-run bait and tackle store. It's important to keep them alive.
Absolutely. Support and shop local, 100%.
And I also want to thank our sponsors, Connecticut, Minnesota DNR, North Dakota Tourism, and lastly, Star Bank.
Well, thank you, Josh. I appreciate you taking the time to chat with me about muskie fishing, and I am so excited. We do it's our tradition that we go out every single fall season. So I know we're going to make it happen this fall because I still have my goal, and you're going to be my guy to help me get there. Is a muskie over 50 inches, even if it is at 50 inches. That's what we're going for. We're going to make
I've
it
heard
happen.
that. We are going to make it happen. One of these times, we're going to get it done.